Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Drago Dog Walk Talk. It's the 29th of October. And before we start, I'm going to get on a high horse. Something that just drives me insane, that you hear from lots of different commentators, experts, and so on and so on. And you see it in papers, and it just drives me nuts. It's a 50-cent word, as they would say in the South. You're talking big words now, boy. We're talking about a big 50-cent word. We're talking about the word decimate. They've decimated the enemy. They will no longer fight. Their economy has been decimated. It's decimate this and decimate that. And bloody hell, nobody understands what the word decimate actually means. That just drives me. If you want to say the enemy's been destroyed, you obliterated them. You liquidated them. You destroyed them. You didn't decimate them. Decimate comes from the word deci, tenth. Every tenth, 10%. Decimate. So what decimation was, if we're going to go down the line historically, is what the Romans did to their legions. If a legion broke and ran, they faced decimation as a punishment. What decimation meant was that every 10th legionnaire would be put to death, and be put to death by his fellow legionnaires. So they drew straws, basically. And, the 10th man out, whoever got the short straw from each deci, each 10 men. And he would get stoned or stabbed or what have you to death by his fellows. Decimation means you take out, if you decimate the enemy, you destroy 10% of them. They're still combat capable. I mean, it's just that simple. You see this word constantly being used, and nobody seems to understand what the hell it actually means. Annihilate. Okay, they're annihilated. Use that word. Destroyed. That's a good word too. Non-combat capable is a good word, is a good phrase. Not decimate. Give Drago fresh water. You don't see this right now, but it's going after every puddle, which then upsets him, his stomach, and then I get another mess to clean up. But you give him fresh water, and they go after the puddles. I guess the puddles taste better. I don't know, but yeah. So dogs, certain things you just never understand about them. But so that's my high horse. That's been just something that's been brewing for a long time. I'm like, God, I just got to say something. I can't take this anymore. Learn what decimate means. You're going to use a 50-cent word, at least use it properly. Don't make a fool out of yourself by not knowing what the word means if you're going to use that big old word. Otherwise, use little words. Anyways, that's my Southern. So what's next? What's next is the Trump sanctions that have just killed Russia. That's right. We're dead. We're dead in the water. Oil and gas, Russian oil and gas is off the market. It's all over. Trump laid in the sanctions. Lindsey Graham had his little Woody that he rubbed out. Keane and the other generals are all, having a little orgy somewhere. Swimming in the money that they're earning from CNN and Fox. That's right. It's all over. It's all over, ladies and gentlemen. Russia's closing up. In fact, we're going to have a fire sale tomorrow, and we're all going home. I don't know where the home's going to be, but entire populations are going to leave. That's it. We're closed. Trump dropped the sanctions. In fact, they were so devastating. They were just so devastating that the price of oil went up 8%. Yeah, corrected back out to 3% 2 days later, so it's only up 5%. But that could be because, wait a minute, there's just as much oil as there was before. So that's the next issue. All these morons are jumping up and down, particularly holes. Oh my God, the Yukis are just having orgasms on various online platforms. Yeah, that's it. The Russian oil and gas is gone. Ha 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 ha. Here's the problem with it. First of all, there's just as much Russian oil and gas being sold as there was before Trump sanctions. And if you're stupid enough to believe anything comes out of the Trump White House about China and India quitting procurement of Russian oil and gas, well, then you deserve to be treated like a fool. And by the way, I got a bridge to sell you in the middle of the Arizona desert. Or maybe it's a Sahara desert. We'll dig one up for you somewhere. So Russia sells, just for a little quick rundown on the oil and gas market. Russia produces 11 million barrels a day. Uses 4 million of those barrels, sells 7 million of those barrels, which comes out to about 6% of the world's oil market that's sold. Not produced, but actually sold. Russia also produces about 70% of the world's diesel that goes for sale. I guess to be just understand that. So, like it or not, one way or the other, Europe is still running on Russian diesel. And it's don't get that much of a choice. It's going through multiple layers now to make it molecules of freedom instead of Russian molecules of energy. So in other words, you just pay more for it, but you get to feel good about it, or some such. But so you get this. You get the Russian oil. It's still being sold. Half that oil goes to China and India. They buy about half of that, and the rest goes on the market. By the way, Singapore is a big reseller of oil. The big oil fields of Singapore, you know. Singapore is a massive reseller of oil. It just it oil launders. So the oil goes through Singapore and it stops being somebody else's oil. It becomes Singaporean oil, and then where it goes, you know, who cares? Wherever the order's taken. So you get that. So no, Russian oil is still in the market. If you took 6%, 7% of the world's oil off the market instantly, you'd have a hell of a lot more of a price rise than 5%, maybe 15, 20%, because it's not a 1% less and 1% increase. Markets don't work that way. A lot of people seem to think markets work that way. They don't work that way. The way markets work is it's a bidding war. So whether it's a full-on scarcity or it's only a feeling of scarcity, people start bidding. And when there's actual scarcity, even if it's not a massive scarcity, people start bidding even more. And the bigger countries bid higher to outbid the little countries, and prices rise a lot faster. You may correct over time, especially if a lot of the panic passes, but a lot of that panic won't pass, and it won't pass very quickly. It'd be a hell of a lot more of an increase than 5% over a course of about 4 days. So obviously Russian oil and gas hasn't gone anywhere. Russia is also going to totally bypass a lot of these issues with America, period. Because well, first of all, let's begin with the fact that Russia sells oil and gas to China, to India, and a lot of other countries in local currencies. There's no dollars there to sanction. And it's just a matter of fact of setting up local banks that have absolutely $0 exposure. And then they can do whatever they want. Plus, Russia has a big pipeline into China. That pipeline is going to be getting expanded all the way up to India, so Bangladesh is going to be getting energy. And sooner or later, there'll be a line that'll be going down to Southeast Asia, too. So again, bye-bye anything the U.S. can touch, short of causing revolutions in countries along the route, which would put the pressure on all the countries around there to make sure those revolutions fail quickly. You know, intervene with military force to stabilize, something the U.S. really can't do. We're going to get to see Trump's big war with Venezuela and Colombia coming up, and the draft that will come up, because there's no way in hell the U.S. military is going to be able to handle both Venezuela and Colombia. It won't be able to handle Venezuela. I was corrected. I thought most of Venezuela's oil was offshore. I was corrected. It's only about 20% that's offshore. The rest of the 80% is inland. And that means U.S. troops have to be actually garrisoning those areas and then trying to get the oil out. You know, when a drone can fly 20 plus kilometers, it's a lot of area to garrison. It's a hell of a lot of area to garrison. And what do you do then? You start to draft, because the U.S. military at its present form is incapable of doing an occupation of a country as rough and the size of Venezuela, let alone if you add Colombia to that too. And whatever forces Machado can muster ain't going to be enough. They'll be stuck in a civil war. So anyways, where has the economic sanctions actually hit? And there have been goals scored, don't get me wrong. So what was the goal that was hit? Because there was a goal. in a way, it's a self-goal. I just wrote an article about this, but it's in Russian. So I'll go and talk about what I wrote. And the self-goal is first and foremost for the Europeans. Of course, the Europeans. Who else gets the benefit of all American sanctions, if not those ever loyal and ever suffering vassals of the American empire? That's right, you Euros. You're already getting the benefit of it all. You see, those sanctions, they're not just against oil and gas, obviously. They're also against any investments in any property belonging to Rosneft and Lukoil. So part of this is refineries. There are 9 refineries owned by Gazprom, Lukoil and Rosneft in the EU. 3 in Germany, 1 in Bulgaria, Hungary, Slovakia, Bulgaria, Netherlands, Romania. Who else? I'm missing someone there. Anyways, so there's 9 refineries in all. And yeah, well, here's the problem. They're all now having to be closed down. Oh, Finland. That one is tough oil. So there's no raw materials going in those refineries. And those refineries are going to have to be sold. Some of those refineries are actually partially stolen in a raid like economic development, partially stolen by the various EU governments. But nonetheless, they're still officially owned by Rosneft and Lukoil, and sanctions hit them fully. So they can't produce because any banks working with them for buying raw material, oil in this case, or reselling or selling their products, they're all getting sanctioned by the U.S., and the U.S. has refused flat out to do any exemptions. Now, the UK passed a certain, more or less sanctions like that. They gave the Germans exceptions. But the UK is the UK. It's not exactly the US in this case. It doesn't have a reserve currency, not anymore, not in a long time. So the US is now hitting hard. They're whacking the long-suffering Euros in the balls real hard. And the Euros are, of course, on their knees begging. Merz is running to Trump, begging him to give him an exception for his oil refineries, or the Russian oil refineries in Germany. And Trump said, nope, go pound sand, dear Nazi Merz. And Merz is in big problems. Because, you know what? There could very soon be a very big shortage of fuel in the German economy. Big shortage of fuel. 3 key refineries. Never mind 6 more refineries all over the EU. You're talking big shortages of fuel, of diesel, of benzene. Never mind other products from cracking, even plastic, which is a product of cracking, is the last thing that's cracked out of oil. By the way, plastic, interesting enough, is a gas that's then combined with other chemicals and makes little white pellets that we recognize as plastic in the raw form. Anyways, I digress. So there's the problem. What do you do now? And the self-goal for the holes, which is always hilarious, is part of that fuel that was being produced for the Euros would then ship over to Ukraine and the Ukrainian military. Yeah, inadvertently, but that's how it goes, that whole chain. So the holes they never were exactly the smartest people around. So these idiots are celebrating the fact that their military is not going to be out of fuel in their society. Because guess what? When it comes down to it, whatever fuel is being produced that's not filling that hole as is going to go first and foremost to the European economies. Try running a modern economy without diesel. Even if trains do move most of your things, the end from train station to factory is still diesel run. So there's that. But you say, wait, America can sell them fuel. And it can, absolutely. So there's the win for America. Well, it's a certain win, of course, because America can win, American investors in large oil companies can win. Why can they win? Because the price of fuel will go up, because they're sending it to a more desperate and thus higher paying zone, the European zone. So they'll be able to earn more. Now, what does that mean for the average schmo in the U.S. stuck paying Trump's psychotic tariffs? Yes, right. Get paid by the end consumer, not by the producer. I just like to remind that to all the people who actually believe Trump's crap and study economics. Trump sure as hell doesn't. Well, here's the problem with that little issue. Because guess what happens? That's right. Prices in the U.S. go up as supply goes down. Because the U.S. is now supplying... we'll be supplying both the European Union and itself with actual fuel, not oil or gas. Prices in the U.S. at the pump will go up. Welcome to inflation. They'll go up no matter what, because to some degree less than oil, but gasoline, diesel are also fungible goods, fungible commodities. Again, less so than oil, but still they are. So there you go. There you go. Some people will get rich, those around Trump, and probably some of Trump's investments, and the vast majority of you are going to get poor. And the euros, well, the euros, stupid, should hurt, and it does, but they're masochists, so they enjoy the pain. I don't know how else to put it. How else you would explain that level of stupidity. But that's how that goes. So where do we go from there? Well, we go to Pokrovsk. Looks like at least southeast Pokrovsk and Mirograd are days away from falling. God, I saw a video of the skies above Pokrovsk. I do not envy any of those holes sitting there and any of those NATO mercs. You want to talk about drones? I think you could jump from drone to drone across the sky. I mean, in a 20-second video of the sky, I counted at least 12, 13 drones flying around looking for targets. And that's a very small area that they were in. So if everything's like that, it's shooting fish in a barrel type game at this point. And it's probably a week to 2 weeks before, I would call it probably close to something like 2 weeks before everything falls in northern Pokrovsk, Krasnoarmeysk. And then the flower opens up, which means all those locations into which the Russian army can flow. They can go west between themselves, and between Pokrovsk and Dnepropetrovsk is, I think, one large town, Pavelsk, I believe the name of it, or Petropavlovsk. I got to check. All these names repeat with very small changes in the name, very slight changes. But there's one large town along the way, but that can be bypassed. That's the interesting thing. It's about halfway over to Dnepropetrovsk. So, other than that, to the north, the Russian army will go forward, surge up, and finish the surrounding of the conglomerate of Slaviansk, Kramatorsk, and Konstantinovka, which is already basically surrounded. And from the northwest, and from northeast moving to northwest, there's already combat happening in Krasny Liman. So sooner than later, Krasny Liman will fall. And that will surround that conglomerate from the north. Now, American generals, in their enlightened stupidity, they decided to slow down the Russian conquest of Volchansk. Volchansk is in northern Kharkov Oblast on the Russian border. There's been a lot of fighting in that town for a long time, but the Russian army's number one goal wasn't to take that much territory. It was enough to take the high ground, dig in, and let the Ukrainians wear themselves out in counterattacks, which they did for almost a year. And now they're moving forward because Ukrainians are pretty worn out. Well, Volchansk is the big town. After that, there's a lot of small villages along the way toward Kharkov, and it closes off northeast Kharkovskaya Oblast. So what we've got here is, in their infinite wisdom, the American generals have decided to launch HIMARS strikes on a dam in Belgorod. And they hit the dam, and they've busted the dam, and there's water flowing out of the dam. Oh yeah, they got mission accomplished in that one. And yes, that slowed down because the river Serebryanka runs from Belgorod through the middle of Volchansk. It slowed down the Russian move. Russia's lost a certain amount of equipment, absolutely has, due to swamping effects and from the flooding. Now, Volchansk, there's like 20% of it left anyways. So they were going to save Volchansk. They should have done it a long time ago. But here's the problem. Because American generals are not exactly too smart, and we know, as I've been saying for several years, and as the New York Times was so gentlemanly to confirm what I was saying, all the missiles, ATACMS and all the other HIMARS missiles, everything is controlled absolutely by Americans. Americans determine the targets, they allow for the launches, they guide them in, and so on. So those are American missiles firing on Russian infrastructure. But, you know, luckily, those missiles and the decision points are in the hands of morons. Morons like, well, like any of those generals that we see on television every day, as it is, spouting stupidity. The the filter on talent in the U.S. is very much in effect for generals. The anti-talent filter. So they blew up, they haven't totally destroyed the dam, but they heavily damaged it, and there's a lot of water spilling out. So that the top levels of the water reserve, they're spilling out. And yes, like I said, Russian positions have been flooded. The Russian move on the Volchansk has been halted for now. But here, then you start getting these interesting articles where up to 4,000 Ukrainian soldiers are in threat of being flooded out. Because I know. This is going to be a radical idea here, but bear with me through this radical notion. Water flows downhill. Bloody hell, I know. It's hard to believe that. And water continues to flow past the Russian positions. I know, it's insane, absolutely. And the Serebryanka River, it continues to flow. So yeah, it continues to flow. The Serebryanka continues to flow south of Volchansk through central Kharkiv Oblast, and then it takes a dog turn just south of Kharkiv and goes south of Kharkiv all the way out and is heading toward the Dnieper. So what do you get? Oh, you get flooding all the way down the river. So now, since the Serebryanka covers most of Kharkiv Oblast on its way south, the flooding, there's 4,000 Ukrainian soldiers that are in threat of being flooded, already been flooded, have to be evacuated. But here's the best part. It takes out the entire Ukrainian logistics to northeastern Kharkiv Oblast, which is being hit from three directions as it stands right now by the Russian army. That's right. Northeastern Kharkiv for the Ukrainians is now basically logistically cut off, thanks to the American generals. I'm pretty sure some of them are probably on the Kremlin's payroll, making either that or they're so terminally stupid that they can't read a map, which you know, probably is also true. And maybe they're also on the Kremlin payroll, because you have to be that stupid not to figure this out. But it gets better, because, again, the dogleg turn south of Kharkiv and the flooding that will continue, and there's one big dam east of Kharkiv with a big reservoir. I don't know if it can handle that much more water before it breaks, so you're going to get a cascading effect of dam after dam breaking because of massive amounts of water coming in. That's normally regulated by the dams above. You know, normally when you have heavy rainstorms and that, dams communicate with each other, or the management, and they do controlled releases, one after the other, to keep the pressure down. But this is not a controlled release. So now you've got this big flood that's going to be heading downwards, down that whole line. And what's next? Of course, what's next is the big reserve east of Kharkiv, which is probably going to break or just flood everything around it. And when it breaks through, it's going to go south of Kharkiv, and it'll cut Kharkiv off from the rest of Ukraine. So making defending Kharkiv much more difficult, because a lot of logistics are going to be very damaged. Okay, some idiots are walking behind us, screaming. So yeah, so you're going to get that effect. So when the time comes for the Battle of Kharkiv, guess maybe Heidekev's already going to be cut off. So the Battle of Heidekev is going to be able to come a lot faster and sooner. Yeah, insane how things like that work. So that's it for now for me. I hope you all enjoyed this video as every other video. I haven't bored you too much, but yes, the comedy show keeps rolling. The clown world keeps coming. God bless. Support this channel if you can support financially. That's great. But sign up, hit like, let the algorithm know, do its thing, share, and I will see you soon. Cheers. God bless.